Hello, how is everybody doing? Welcome to RossonARI TV. Before we get started, make sure you click that like button and subscribe. Help us grow the channel, help us get that algorithm up. Well, today's topic is simply to be or not to be. The great conundrum, the great life's conundrum. Shakespeare brought this up, and it is a subject that reflects upon our lives in many, many different aspects. Today, this famous phrase reflects on this conundrum that AC Milan faces when playing the Champions League. To be or not to be. Do we sacrifice the Serie A in order to make sure that we're 100% for the Champions League? Or do we not sacrifice the Serie A and risk not being 100% for the Champions League? This is the conundrum, to be or not to be. If we look at precedent, this concept, this approach towards the game has worked for Milan during the Ancelotti era. We saw it mostly in that era, in which it worked for Ancelotti, but we did sacrifice the Serie A in order to really focus on the Champions League nights. So one thing we know for sure, when we look at the Serie A and the Champions League, the club against Empoli sent out a message. The priority is the Champions League. And the reason why we know the priority is the Champions League is simply because against Empoli, Pioli put out a team that did not include his best 11. Rather, he gave space to the second lines, Origi, Rebic, Pobega, Ciao. And this is a clear message that Milan really takes the Champions League seriously, and Milan is respecting that Champions League DNA that it has built throughout the years. The question is, what does this mean for the Serie A? What does this mean for the Serie A? Today, we found ourselves in a situation in which Milan is fourth. The two Roman clubs, Lazio and Roma, are above us, second and third. And of course, Napoli is way off towards winning their third Scudetto in their history. And there's also that lingering possibility that Juventus might get its points back, which would mean that would be even more difficult for Milan, seeing how things are going. But at the end of the day, is this something that we should recognize as a positive, the fact that we sacrificed the Serie A for the Champions League, or not? I think that in general, Milan fans should feel that, against Empoli, there's no excuses. Our second lines should be doing the job. But the truth is that football is not that simple. Football is not that simple. And the problem is that we, just like this team has done many times, we underestimate our opponents. And we forget that right now in this period, Serie A is very competitive. And the coaches are very tactically astute. And that, teams are playing football and teams are finding always better and better ways to stop the bigger teams. And this is why it is very important to make sure that that summer mercato, you hit the bullseye in that summer mercato. And this is one thing that I learned this season, that I kind of always knew, but this season it's been an eye opener. You really win the competitions in the summer. You don't win the competitions on the field. You win the competitions on the summer. It is the summer where the competition starts. It is the work that the directors do in the summer that decide what your season is going to look like. And it has never been so clear to me as it was this past summer. So, this is exactly why it is so important to make sure that the team is filled with good, hungry quality that is ready to play, ready to give it their all, ready to show their worth. And a game like this is exactly why you would need that. In these games where we have to sacrifice our best 11 because we want them to be 100% for the Champions League, this is where we need our second lines to be top-notch dogs as well, because it's their turn to win the games. It's their turn now to show their worth. It's their turn to give the coach headaches, right? The issue this season is that Pioli is not having too many headaches as far as a selection. He knows who the best 11 are. There's about 13, 14 players in this team that deserve to be in the 11. And then everybody else is struggling to get in there. And this is the weakness of AC Milan this year. But is this weakness uh, enough for us to risk top four? It should not be. It should not be, because even though the quality of the bench is not as high as much as we would like it to be, it's still good enough for us to be top four. Is it good enough to be of the same level as Napoli and also Juventus? If you bring back those 15 points, Juventus is having an excellent season, aside from how they play football. So our roster is good for the top four. Is it good for the first place? No, it's not, guys. It is not. And this was clear in the summer. It was clear in the summer who had the best roster, who was going to win this marathon. But one thing I want to stress, one thing I do want to stress, that Milan is a team that in a sprint can beat anybody, right? And there's a big difference between a sprint and a marathon. A sprint lasts 9 seconds, 8 seconds, 10 seconds. A marathon lasts hours. Very different. Very different type of competition. Very, very different type of competition. So yes, we do have a roster for us to win a sprint, but we do not have a roster for us to win a marathon. And this last game against Empoli was one of those stretches in the marathon where we needed to gain ground, but we didn't. We didn't. So we go back to the question: to be or not to be? My opinion is that Pioli and the club is doing the right thing, because I really think that this year we have a great opportunity to go to the final of the Champions League, and why not try and take that opportunity? I think that Pioli did the right thing. I think Pioli did the right thing to not leave Leao out, Giroud out, Krunic out, Chow, Kjaer out, especially Giroud and Kjaer being the older players. I believe that he really did a good thing, because we need these players to be fully fit for the Napoli game. We cannot risk losing Leao. That would be terrible if we lose Leao. Diaz also was left out from the starting lineup. Diaz had received a knock. I completely agree with Pioli's decisions. When he looked at himself, when he looked at that skull, looking back to himself, and he asked himself to be or not to be, he answered the right question to himself. And can I be mad? Can I be mad that we did not, you know, take advantage of this opportunity to gain points when Inter loses, when Lazio Juventus play on the same day, when Roma is right there behind us? I can't, because that Champions League game is too important. The San Siro is waiting for those Wednesday, Tuesday nights, for that Champions League theme. That's what the San Siro lives for. And I do want to say a few things. Now, I had mentioned this in the post match the other day, because I was paying attention to Napoli as well. Napoli did not take the same approach. Napoli, even though they are 20 points above us and a lot of points above second spot, they still put on their best roster. They didn't, they wanted to win that game. For them, maybe after that 4-0 bashing, for them it was very important to win the next game in order to regain some confidence. So maybe Spalletti didn't want to take any risks. But that also tells me that he was willing to risk the fitness of his best players for the Milan game, which tells me which team right now is feeling the moment more. Which team right now is more focused on the objective? Spalletti was willing to take risks. You could have lost Varaskelia, you could have lost Kim, you could have lost Lobotka, you never know. Pioli said, no chance. I want to be 100% when we get to that Champions League game. I want my players to be rested. No injuries, no knocks, no fatigues. We want 100%. And I'm going to be cautiously optimistic and say that this is very positive and it balances on our favor. The San Siro is going to be a crucial game for this clash, and I'm very much so looking forward to it. I think I'm very positive about it, but I'm also aware that Napoli is a great team this year, and anything can happen. So, the big question, to be or not to be, I think it was answered correctly. So I'm not going to blame Pioli. I'm not going to blame maybe I'm not going to blame, the defense and the midfield. I do think that there are players up front in our squad that are not carrying their weight. And these are some of the players that make the most money in the squad. The team right now is unbalanced. There's a little bit of an imbalance going on in this team. Some of the players that are making the most money in that locker room are players that are not performing at all. And if we don't get these players to perform, Milan can't be at its maximum. So I really hope that this situation gets resolved soon. Maybe we're heading towards the final stretch of the marathon, when the Serie A, and these players need to show up because we need to secure that top four spot. We need to secure that top four spot. So, after the Napoli game, we have to get back into business, but we also be ready for this, gentlemen and ladies. Be ready for this. If Milan keeps going further ahead in the Champions League, be ready for Milan to keep on doing these sacrifices. Be ready for Pioli to be asking himself to be or not to be, because if we get into that semifinal, it's going to be the same thing. We're going to have to sacrifice Serie A games for the Champions League games, and it might be very bumpy. So be ready for this. And again, this is why we need depth, we need quality, and this is the time for these players to earn those big salaries they're getting. Now is the time. So I hope things turn around. One of the positive things about this game that I was very happy about was Florenzi coming back. He looked very good, coming in, very dangerous, very good crosses. He almost got himself an assist, almost got himself on the score sheet, also hit the post. So it is a player that we have coming from the bench, maybe even more, that we didn't have all season due to his injuries. So this is an extra resource, an extra reliable resource that Milan has, and that we will be able to use. So this is positive. This is very positive. Okay, one thing I want to say, I do want to compliment Zanetti on something, because guys, I'm a part of the coaches union, and I always appreciate coaches and their tactics and what their words. And I want to also say that this year Serie A is very, very difficult, because we do have some very interesting coaches coming up, and the level in Italy is going up. It is going up. I saw also a reflection of this from the national teams, the youth sector, during the break. I was paying attention to the national team from the U16, U18, U19, U20, U21. All these teams are looking very good. All these teams are looking very good. So I can see that there's the level is going up back in Italy. The competition is going up back in Italy. And there was something that I read that Zanetti said that I appreciate. This week has been very interesting for me when it comes down to coaches. Stankovic said something that I just fell in love with. He said that on the football field, sometimes you need a man more than a football player. You could write a book with what that means. You could write a book with that what that means. And Zanetti said something that I really liked. I really liked and I really appreciate from the perspective of a coach. Here it is. So he was asked regarding his tactics, and he said, um, you know, we say it without shame. For a team that has to save itself, there are also these matches. If you give Milan space, you risk going home with a goal blitz. Before leaving Empoli, we had a load of humility to fight for every ball and keep the pace as low as possible. This rewarded us in the end. For anybody that is a student of the game, very clever. Very clever. Slow your opponents down by not giving them space. Very clever. That's very clever there. And again, this is why teams like Barcelona is the best example. The Guardiola's Barcelona. This didn't matter because they had so much quality that you had players that could, play at any tempo. And this is why a really good footballer is not a footballer that knows how to play football at 1,000 miles per hour, because you can manipulate the timing, you can manipulate the rhythm of a team that you're playing against or the team that you're playing for. And you have to be able to play at first gear, second gear, third gear, fourth gear, fifth gear efficiently. You need to know how to do all of these things. And playing slowly is much more difficult than playing fast. It is much more difficult than playing fast because when you play slowly, you have to think. You have to think. It's the IQ game is the slow game. The fast game is the instinctual game. It is the game that is based on instincts and it's based on that direct play, which that game is a game that you need physicality, you need speed of thought, you need technique, you need a lot of good things. But that's the thing. In order to be all rounded, you have to be able to do everything. You have to be able to play at the first gear extremely well, and you have to be able to play at fifth gear extremely well. And quality is the answer. You want the solution to teams that slow you down, to teams that um, bring down the tempo and close the spaces. You need quality. You need genius. You need the feet, and you need that quality. Now, I do think that if we started with our best 11, maybe this game would have gone differently. And if the mindset was just Empoli, we just have to be Empoli. We don't need to be thinking about the Champions League. I think the game would have gone very differently. And Leao would have started, and he would have probably in the course of 80 minutes or 85 minutes, or if he played the full game, they wouldn't have been able to contain him. They wouldn't have been able to contain him for 90 minutes. The same thing with Brahim Diaz right now. If he played on the right, where there's more space for him, Krunic in the middle, Giroud as the finalizer. Right now, that team, the starting 11 that we have right now, right now in this current moment is looking quite good. So if the focus was solely on Empoli, I really don't think they would have been able to stop us. I think we would have won this game by a good margin as well. The issue is that we came into this game thinking about Napoli. So anyway, Empoli kind of got lucky because of that, but good for them. Good for them. They got their point. They might stay in Serie A, whatever. They did their job, and unfortunately, our attackers didn't do their job. So The game itself, I do want to spend some words on some of the players. I thought the defense was excellent. The whole game, we only conceded 2 shots, and was towards the end of the game where we opened up even more. We had 70% of ball possession, 24 shots in total, but only 4 on target. 7 were blocked, and then the rest were off target. So definitely that's the quality that is missing right there. That is the quality that is missing right there that we need these bench players to bring in. Um, Out of 24 shots, if Leao, Giroud, and Diaz, and we had I do believe that we would have been able to take this home. So, guys, this is it. To be or not to be. And this is the life that we need to contend with when it comes to AC Milan, when it comes to the big nights of the Champions League. You got to sacrifice something in order to have, glory at the end. We saw this with the Ancelotti days. We saw this with a lot of different coaches, a lot of different periods in Milan's history where they were doing really well, and they always did this. They always did this. I really think, I'm going to say last thing, but if we get this summer mercato coming up right, first of all, we have to finish top 4. These issues we will not have these issues. Having said that, I really wish that our players coming from the bench, especially the players that are making the most money in this team, are going to step up in the final stretch of the Serie A, because we are going to need those players in the Serie A, especially if we keep on going in the Champions League. So I'm going to send out the most positive energy I can towards these guys, and I really hope that we can achieve our goals this season. Having said that, Forza Milan. Looking forward to the Napoli game. Watch out for lives coming up, possibly tomorrow, Monday, Tuesday. And tell me what you think, to be or not to be. Tell me what you think. Leave us some comments. Leave me some comments, and click that like button, guys. Click that like button, subscribe, and do all that good stuff. Having said that, guys, have a great day. Peace out. Forza Milan. Ciao.